الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فقال الله تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله تعالى وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار ثم أما بعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. My dear brothers and sisters, today I want to share with you something which is something that excites my own self, because it is knowledge which is not known to everybody, and it is something that many people, because of not knowing this, it causes them to have misunderstandings in the deen. A few weeks ago, I was asked a question. Why is it that when we were back home, whatever country we were from, why is it that we learn certain practices to be part of Islam? We learn, no, not this one, the other small. Okay. Why is it that we learned, there's an on small button. You see local reverb? Small hall, large hall, and below that is an on button. In the middle. Testing. Okay, I think it's good now. So the question was that why is it that when we were back home we learned our deen a certain way? We learned certain practices. We learned that certain things were part of the deen and we used to do them. And now we come to America and the cultures mix, and we come across Arabs and we come across American brothers, and the culture drops, and then there's a big collision between our understanding of deen and their understanding of deen. And this is really a very important question, and something really important for us all to understand as to why this happens. And today I want to share with you, with some example and with some historical background as to why these things happen, so that shaitan cannot come to us and fool us by saying that, you know what, there is so much confusion, you don't need to follow anybody. Just go and do your own thing. Don't even go to the masjid, because they're always fighting and disagreeing about things. So you know what, leave that alone and go spend your time at work. Watch TV when you're free. Why do you have to go to masjid where they're fighting? And today I would like, in my own humble way, to try to clarify this situation. Firstly, we need to understand that within the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the people who follow the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and the understanding of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in, within them there are some minor differences. and they are completely acceptable, and there's nothing wrong with any one of them. There's obviously evidences for these differences, but these are only differences in practice. These are only differences in actions, what you're supposed to do. For example, in Salah, some of the scholars within Ahlul Sunnah consider that you should place your hands on your chest. And some of them consider that you should place your hands below your navel. And in fact, one of the opinions in the Maliki madhab is that you don't place your hands here at all, you leave them hanging. Although not all of these are correct, because we know that the Prophet ﷺ prayed a certain way, but if somebody followed any of these things, they would not be going out of the fold of Islam. They would not be considered an innovator. They may be following an opinion which is not as strong as the others, but it is not something that causes us to X them. After these differences, we have to understand that within Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, which follows the path of the Prophet ﷺ and the understanding of the Sahaba, there are no differences in Aqidah. There are no major differences in Aqidah. The differences that there are so minute that if you read two opinions, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the two. But the Aqidah, what we believe in, is the same. There's no difference as to what is Sunnah and what is Bid'ah. Whatever is known to be Bid'ah is known to be Bid'ah. And whatever is known to be Sunnah is known to be Sunnah. And it's very clear, and if you can always find differences, but you have to really dig deep into the books of fiqh and the books of classical books and really go deep. 14 volumes, and you go read like pages and pages, and then you realize that they are talking about one issue for 17 pages. But that is not something that concerns the masses. Then comes the issue, which is the disagreement that happens amongst the masses. The disagreement that happens amongst the masses. And in order to explain to you what I'm trying to say here, I will give you an example. An example that took place in this masjid last Jum'ah. And I've spoken to the father of the person who I'm speaking about, and has discussed with him, and I got his permission to speak about this, and he said, you know what, not only I'm giving you permission, I'm asking you to teach the people that this is wrong. So what is it that happened? If you remember, we had a young brother, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him, who gave the adhan last week. And he had a beautiful voice. And his adhan was beautiful. And everyone was so touched by his adhan. So, we prayed Salatul Jum'ah, and he gave the adhan the week before as well. Because his voice was so beautiful, somebody thought and incorrectly started saying that he is also a hafiz of the Quran. And then last week I wasn't here for Salatul Asr in Jum'ah, on the day of Jum'ah, and there was none of the usual brothers who lead the Salah, and that young brother happens to be there. And somebody said, he is a hafiz of the Quran. Somebody says, yes, I've heard that too. So let's have him lead the Salah. He is not even 10 years old yet. He's not even 10 years old yet. And because I've spoken to his father, I can tell you that although, alhamdulillah, he had a beautiful voice, he did not know the proper sunnah of giving the adhan. He did not know that you're supposed to turn this way and that way when you say hayya al-salah and hayya al-falah. So if someone, and this is not saying to disrespect him or put him down, but so that we could learn. But someone not knowing these things, they said, you know what, if he has a beautiful voice, he must be a hafiz of the Quran. And if he is a hafiz of the Quran, and he has a beautiful voice, then how about we have him lead the Salah? The reason why I'm sharing this with you is that this is not something that just happened once. It happens all the time. And I will give you examples, and then you will see, you know what? Yes, I've seen it happen. All the puzzles fit in. For this young brother, for his sake, with consultation from his father, I have banned him for the time being from giving the adhan, leading the salah, or doing anything on the mic, in order to protect him. Because the people, if we leave the people to be, they will make him a sheikh today. And tomorrow they will make him Shaykh al-Islam. And the day after they will start worshipping him. This is the common trend that goes. So with the consultation of his father, I've asked him and I've told him, you are not going to give any adhan. You're not going to lead the salah. You're not going to recite in public. We will teach you. We will train you. And your time will come. So that he himself doesn't start to think, you know what? The people are giving me so much respect. I must be something. And then when that happens, that person is destroyed. Many people like this. Alhamdulillah, with him we have put a protective measure. We have stopped him from doing these things. But there are many people who do not have these protective measures. And someone who is good in one thing ends up becoming a big star. And because the people give him so much respect, they start taking on to other roles. And I can give you an example, and it is not backbiting when you talk about a public figure. We had a brother who visited us by the name of Junaid Jamshed. Junaid Jamshed used to be a singer. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in his heart that this is wrong, and he made tawbah. And he stopped singing, and now he sings Islamic nasheeds. Now first, people started bringing him to the masajid and saying, you know what, why don't you tell us how you made tawbah? What caused you to make tawbah? So people were very touched by his story. Then they said, you know what, how about you also sing the nasheed for us? So he would sing the nasheed for them. Then he started going around, people giving him respect, they started going around, and Junaid Jamshed became Maulana Junaid Jamshed. Sheikh Junaid Jamshed. And now when he goes to masajid, he gives a religious advice to the people. And he has a beard, so people don't know the difference, that he is not an alim, he is not a scholar. He has just started his path to knowledge. In fact, and obviously we are all human beings, and sometimes these things get to us. And there have been places where imams were upset with him, because he was sitting there on the stage telling imams that you guys are doing this wrong and you guys are doing that wrong. And they said, you know what, he just came yesterday and he's teaching us. But these things happen. This is one example. Then there are other examples. We are not saying this to disrespect him or to decrease from his honor, but what we're saying is that it's the people that do it. It's the people that do it. Somebody grows a beard and they start calling him Sheikh and Maulana and Imam and Hafiz and Sufi Sahib and all of these things. And obviously when one person says it, the other person doesn't know why it started. Was it out of respect, or was he actually that he studied and he's a Sheikh? And then what happens is that when people come to them and say, do I have to give zakah on my car? And he says, you know what? I think yes, you have to give zakah on your car. Even the car that I drive? Yes, of course, it's a valuable thing, you have to give zakah. I mean, basically wrong fatwa start to come out like this. And many of the bad practices, many of the innovative practices start exactly like this. I can tell you other examples of somebody who his academic history is nothing. The institute that he claims to study from, they wrote a whole op-ed saying this person is an imposter, he did not study here, he's lying. What this person ended up doing is that he used the name of this institute, then went around, and what he would do is that he would pull out a book from some classical scholar, like way back, hundreds of years. And they used to write small books like, 15 pages, 20 pages. He would take that book and he would add his own comments on each page, like maybe 1 or 2 or 3 lines of comments on each page, and then he publishes that as the Sheikh's new book. And like that, he has done thousands of them. And now when somebody questions his academic history, they say, how can you say something like this about someone who has written 1,000 books? Do you see how the trend becomes? And now when he speaks, people listen. When he gives fatwa, people follow. When he gives a command, people die. But where did it begin? It began from nothing solid. And then we have lots of fake peers. In fact, we have even had a fake prophet like this. There was a man by the name of Tulayha al-Asadi from the tribe of Banu Asad. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, in the time of the Sahaba, there was a group of men. There were a group of men who were lost in the desert. They were lost in the desert, and they thought that they were going to die. So they sat down in one spot, and they just waited for their death, because if you get lost in the desert, there is no hope for you. So they sat down. One person, he said, let me go and see if I can find water. And he took the camel of Tulayha. He took the camel of Tulayha, and he went around and he found water. So they were so happy. So somebody said, just, you know how people say things, this is a blessed camel that belongs to a blessed man. When he heard it, he said, you know what, let me use this to my advantage. And he basically went on and he said, you know what, I'm not just a blessed man, I'm a prophet of Allah. Na'udhu billah. So my dear brothers and sisters, we need to understand and look deeper into these things. We need to look deeper into personalities. Just because someone speaks well doesn't mean that they're a scholar. Doesn't mean that they are a scholar. Another reason why there are a lot of differences and misunderstandings between people and cultural practices differ is a historical issue studied in Hadith studies, which is the issue of Hadith forgery, Hadith fabrication. Believe it or not, there have been people in the past, and I'm sure there are people now, who intentionally make up false hadith. They intentionally make up false hadith and say this is what the Prophet said in order to support whatever cause that they are supporting. And these are not the scholars that did that. And the scholars, they immediately, when they saw a fake hadith, they knew that this is a fake hadith. There are many different ways to check. The hadith scholars know. But the masses were confused. The masses were confused. And in fact, even in our community, a person who deceived the people by putting out a 4-page article. And in this article, he put a hadith which are fabricated, that are weak, and no scholar, not a single hadith in that paper is a hadith where no one has a question about its authenticity. However, this was spread out in the community, and the people said, this hadith is a hadith. How could this be lying? And then this is how the people are confused. This is how the people are confused. And these ahadith that people make up, they sound beautiful, lyrical, amazing. They take you to Jannah right away when you hear that hadith. However, when you look into the history of this hadith, when you look into the chain of transmission, you realize that this is not correct. There was a person from one of the leaders of a deviant sect. He eventually made tawbah. He made tawbah, and then when he stopped doing what he was doing, somebody one day mentioned the hadith in front of him. And this man, he said, before you accept a hadith, make sure that you study the conditions of its narrators. Who narrated it? Who were the people who passed it on? Because when we, and he mentioned the name of his sect, wanted to propagate something, when we wanted to spread an idea, we would fabricate a hadith exactly what we needed it to be. Just right then and there, they would come up with, okay, you know what, we need the people to turn off their cell phones. So they would come up with a hadith that Prophet ﷺ, in Na'udhu Billah, said, whoever doesn't turn off their cell phone, he will burn in the lowest pit of hellfire. And people say, you know what, that's a very important thing. Turn off the cell phone, right? It achieved the purpose, but the person lied. And the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever lies intentionally on attributing it to me, then let him select his place, or let him know that his place is confirmed in Jannah. In hellfire. This hadith forgery started after the murder of Uthman radiallahu anhu. And there was a man by the name of Abdullah ibn Saba, la'natullahi alayhi. This man was a munafiq of the highest level. He had come simply because he had realized that Muslims could not be fought from the outside, and he started to cause. He came in the perception of a Muslim, but he came only to divide the Muslims and to make them fight. And this man was so evil that he knew what he wanted to spread. He wanted to spread false ideas. He would look at Ali radiallahu anhu. Ali radiallahu anhu would pass in front of him. He would look at him and he would say, you are him, you are him, you are him. He started the idea, na'udhu billah, that Ali radiallahu anhu is God himself. And just like this, when he would look at him, he would say, you are him, you are him, you are him. This really happened. You can check the books of history. This is true. And obviously when somebody like this starts something, when you go down 200 years, no one can track down exactly how it started, why it happened. But now they say, our parents, our fathers, our grandfathers have been doing this. They believed all this time that Ali radiallahu anhu was Allah, na'udhu billah. How can you say that we are wrong? Then these things were also done because of political differences. For example, there were known differences, just differences of opinion between some of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'een. And people who supported one Sahabi in later generations, they started making up false hadith in their favor. For example, there's a fake hadith, fabricated hadith, which is made up, which says that, na'udhu billah, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever wishes to be like Adam alayhi salam for his knowledge, whoever wishes to be like Nuh alayhi salam for his piety, whoever wishes to be like Ibrahim alayhi salam for his gentleness, whoever wishes to be like Musa alayhi salam for commanding patience, whoever wishes to be like Isa alayhi salam for his devotion to worship, then let him be like Ali. Such a beautiful idea. Beautiful names of the prophets of Allah, but it's a false hadith. And the regular person, when he hears it, he says, you know what? Subhanallah, how great is Ali radiallahu. There is no doubt Ali radiallahu is great. We respect him. We love him. We must love him. He's from the family of the Prophet. He's from the supporters of the Prophet ﷺ from day one. But we do not believe anything about him which is not true. Whatever did not come from the Prophet ﷺ is not true. A very popular hadith about Ali radiallahu anhu, which is also fabricated, is that the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said by these liars, is that I am the city of knowledge, and Ali is the door of this city. Okay? Basically, if you think about it, it sounds very nice. But when you look deeply into it, number one, you check the chain and it's false. Secondly, you look deeply into what this hadith means. Means if someone looks at Umar radiallahu anhu as an example, do not accept it. If it's the knowledge is the Prophet and you can only get through it through the door, you must go through Ali radiallahu anhu. You see the idea of how they're very minutiae, but they misguide the masses. Also, there are things like against Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, somebody made up a hadith, when you see Muawiyah on my pulpit, kill him. Na'udhu billah. And then the other side made up hadith, the trusted ones are three. The trusted ones are three. Me, Jibreel, and Muawiyah. Right? And then, the Abbasid Khulafa. when they had political differences and this and that. So they made up a hadith, their people, and they said, when the Khilafah reaches Bani al-Abbas, it will not leave them until they surrender it to Isa alayhi salam. Meaning if anybody else comes along that's not from their family, they're illegitimate and they must give it to the Bani al-Abbas. Right? You see how these things happen. There was a man by the name of Abdul Karim, Abul Awja. He was captured, he was arrested because he was known to fabricate a hadith. And he was given the sentence of death. When they're about to execute him, he said that I have fabricated 4,000 ahadith and I have spread them amongst the people so deep that you will not be able to find them. And I have made halal haram in those ahadith and I have made haram halal in those ahadith. So the governor who was executing him, he said, no problem. We have men like Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal who will sort through them and he will pick them out like pearls from the sand. He knows these, and he knows what is fabricated. Then there were also professional storytellers. And when you're telling a story, they would just make up stories. They make up a hadith in order to support what they were saying. Then there were also people who did it for a good intention. They were too enthusiastic about the deen that it took them to the level that they started forging a hadith. There was a man by the name of Nuh ibn Abi Maryam. Nuh ibn Abi Maryam loved the Quran. And he saw that the people were busy in reading the books of Imam Abu Hanifa and the fiqh of Imam Abu Hanifa. And they were busy in reading the battle stories of such and such commander. And he felt, these people need to come back to the Quran. So what he started doing is that he started making up a hadith in the virtue of the Quran. This surah has this virtue. This surah has that virtue. And unfortunately, my dear brothers and sisters, I have to tell you something that might break your heart. But know that it does not decrease anything from the actual virtue of this surah. This hadith, which is commonly known amongst our Pakistani culture at least, is that Surah Yasin is the heart of the Quran. This hadith is not authentic. And basically there are examples of like this many times. And then there were people who would fake a hadith in order to establish virtue of certain food. Somebody came and he got a large shipment of rice. And now he's stuck with them. He needs to sell it to the people. So he would say, you know what? The Prophet ﷺ loved rice. And then everybody goes and says, let me buy some rice, let me buy some rice. And they basically fake. Somebody got a lot of certain fabric. And they said, you know what? There's a hadith that the Prophet used to wear this. And he used to like it. So then people start going. So that basically these were things which were done in order to, for whatever reasons, sometimes evil purposes, sometimes the intention was wrong, but the action was very severely wrong. So my dear brothers and sisters, when this question comes to mind, why are there differences? Why do people back home practice something else and why do people practice something else here? Why is the Imam here telling us this is not authentic, this is bid'ah, and over there we were doing it all this time? Go back into the history of that action, of that hadith that you have heard, and study in the books. Go ask multiple scholars and ask them what they say. I'll tell you a sign. If there is somebody who knows that the hadith is not authentic, and he doesn't want to tell you, he will not tell you that this hadith does not have a chain. He will tell you, there's no harm in this, it's okay. But if you tell him, no, tell me if this chain, this hadith has a basis. If he doesn't want to tell you, for whatever reason, maybe he's the one supporting it, there's no harm in this, it's okay, don't ask questions like this, it's too advanced for you, won't give you a straight answer. It's a very common, simple thing to understand. So my dear brothers and sisters, some of the lessons that we can learn from this is that it is not enough that someone has a beard and wears long dress and talks religiously saying Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, knows some Quran. It is not enough to take this person and just accept whatever they say just because of that. It has to be more than that. Sources have to be checked. Where is this person studied from? What is his angle? What are these things what is it that he has studied? There's a maxim, there's a muhavara in Urdu. I was trying to look for it, something similar like this in English, but I couldn't find it. In Urdu they say, Neem Hakim, Khatra Jan. Neem Mullah, Khatra Iman. If it's a half a doctor who has not gone through the whole course of knowledge, then he's a danger to your life. Because he's only learned some things but didn't learn the others. If it's a half a scholar, he hasn't gone through the full course of knowledge, he's a danger to your iman. He's a danger to your iman. And he's more dangerous than that half doctor. Because that doctor might kill you and you might still go to Jannah. But this person might send you to hellfire for who knows however long. And he's more dangerous than that. Spend time in studying the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Take some time out. It is not enough for you to be sitting in your stores and watching TV and saying, you know what, this imam doesn't know what he's talking about. These sheikhs, they confuse us. How much research have you done? How many books have you picked up? Not every book is a book that can only be read by a scholar. There are lots of books which are written for masses, for regular people. Pick them up and start reading. If your intention is true, knowledge will come to you. If your intention is true, if your intention is to let me pick up this book and let me see how I can get some more points so I can go and argue with the imam and prove him wrong, no knowledge will come because the intention is not true. Spend time studying the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you follow the process of studying Islam, then you start to realize when people are making mistakes. When you study usul al-fiqh and things like these, basically the basis of Islamic law, you realize when somebody just opens their mouth and they haven't studied that, you immediately realize this person doesn't know what he's talking about. For example, a very common misunderstanding that people have is that whatever is in the Quran is fard, and whatever is in the Hadith is sunnah. This is completely wrong. This is completely wrong. There are things which are in the Quran which are fard, and there are things which are in the Quran which are sunnah, and there are things which are in the Hadith which are fard, and there are things which are in the Hadith which are sunnah. But it doesn't mean the common misunderstanding. So, and lastly, my dear brothers and sisters, when I say all of these things about check who you learn from, I don't free myself from this as well. I am also just a student. In fact, I'm trying to be a student. Many of the classical scholars would not accept me as a proper student. And even when I tell you something, you have the right to come to me and ask me, can you show me some references from what you're talking about? I will give you the name of the book. I will give you the fatwa. I will give you the hadith. I will find you explanations of classical scholars about that. If I don't do that, I will let you know what I'm saying is my own personal opinion, not based on anything in the deen. So no one is free from that. Even the person telling you to question others, even question that person as well. In fact, I prefer that if you have a question, don't ask me. If you really need to ask me and you have no one else, submit it to me in writing. What I will do is that since I am myself learning, I will write an answer. But before I give it to you, I will check it with my teachers and let them verify that answer. And if it is correct, then I will learn. And if it is incorrect, then I will learn. And whatever is the eventual answer, I will get back to you. And let us follow that so that we can get rid of this confusion. Our deen is very clear. Our deen is very clear. It becomes difficult when we don't study. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.